Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast, A Journey Through Nature and Science. With us today, we have Dom Nessie and Michael Brown, two photographers who've taken some, I tell you, awe-inspiring photographs. They'll be sharing those photographs with us today as we discuss their journey through photography. Dom Nessie spent 15 years with the National Park Service as the Chief Information Officer, and then he worked for the LA County system of airports. And after he retired, he decided he was going to take up photography. And I tell you, he's become one of the best photographers in the world. Michael Brown is a photography judge and a lifelong photographer. He worked for the National Park Service for the past 30 years. And when he retired, he became a judge for the Maryland system of photography clubs. And he's also taken some of the best photographs you'll ever see in your life. We're going to be sharing those photographs also. The most exciting thing about this is that you, the viewer, will not only get a chance to see these wonderful photographs, but if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll also get to choose one of these photographs for yourself. You'll get a digital copy of the photograph by just going to my website at natureandsciencepodcast.com. And there's also a link below that you can click on as well. If you're just listening to the audio version of this, you'll also, of course, be able to get one of the photographs and see them for yourselves. All you have to do is go to my website at natureandsciencepodcast.com, and you'll see these spectacular photographs. So Dom and Mike, welcome to the program. So first, we're going to start off with you, Mike. Why don't you tell us what inspired you to become a photographer and begin this journey you're on?
I don't know. I took an interest in photography back in the late 50s, early 1960s, and has just started to develop. Back then, it was all film, of course, and so it was more expensive to get the film developed. After high school, I started getting into medium frame photography, and then later on, as I took on a career with the National Park Service, I started doing large format photography. After several years of doing all that, I gave it all up because it was getting too expensive. Then when digital cameras came out and it became affordable, I jumped back into digital photography, and it was great. I had a much faster return on what I was doing. So if I took a picture, I could see how it turned out right away, as opposed to waiting a week or a month, as was happening with film. And because of that, I became much more excited with photography. And as I started realizing that photography was really helping to calm me down. I'm a workaholic. I was a workaholic for much of my career.
Don't I know it?
and capturing images allowed me to basically drop out of that mindset of focusing on an end and getting focused on what was in front of me and enjoying the environment to the extent that I became far more absorbed into the subject I was looking at. And that became a very positive thing in giving me a better sense of what was around me, as well as who I was. So photography became a way of expressing a part of me that I had buried for much of my life.
In what sense, Mike? Is there any way to expound on that at all?
Well, I'm task oriented. I mean, that's just by my nature. I focus on a task and I get things done. My problem is that I'm not as aware of everything else around me when I'm doing that. I'm just too focused on getting this, whatever it is, done. The whole world is being looked at as something that needs to get fixed, changed, or in some way adjusted, and developing the strategies to do that, and then following through with that. Whereas mindfulness or getting more allowing what's around you become more a part of you, or you become a part of it, was something that was very foreign to me. And photography allowed me to basically take that time and enjoy being able to see the things I saw, whether it's landscapes, wildlife, architecture. It allowed me to basically take a deep breath and enjoy what I was looking at. And that was
So
nice.
it really changed your life.
It did, yes.
Amazing.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dom, what about you, man? How did you get started in photography?
Well, you mentioned two positions that I was in, both at the Park Service and at Los Angeles World Airports. Before that, I was working still for the federal government with Native American communities. And I did carry a small camera, like Mike said, a film camera. And most of my photos were horrible. But I wanted to capture some of the things that I saw on Indian reservations and the places I went to, Alaska, Native Hawaiian areas. And then went to the Park Service, where both Mike and I, you didn't mention it, but we both worked for you, Don. And then started seeing much more beautiful scenery. And then I went to work for Los Angeles International Airport, and got onto the conference circuit, where I was speaking a lot internationally. And then even when I retired from the airport, I started teaching cybersecurity to airports around the world. And little by little, I started bringing better and better cameras. I don't want to embarrass Mike, but he's always been one of my inspirations, because I always had him to talk to. And he was always he is such a great teacher, even to today. And little by little, I just started deciding that I didn't need to bring back souvenirs. I could just bring back photographs. And that's pretty much how it went for me.
Yeah. So in the same vein, have photos been inspirational for you? Did they have an impact on who you are as a person, and give you a different outlook on life?
Well, I can't say it affected. Mike's answer was so articulate that I'm almost embarrassed to say. I just love going out, being in nature. And the part that I like the most, Don, is going to a country where most people haven't visited from the United States, and being exposed to scenery and culture. And I think that came from my time working with Native Americans. And I'll just share an anecdote with you. One time I took the then Secretary Henry Cisneros to Acoma Pueblo. And we were standing on that mesa there in New Mexico. And, I had mentioned to him that housing had been there since 1200 AD. And he said, he's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and he never knew that there were continually inhabited homes in the United States that were almost 1,000 years old. And I think that just opened up for me, Don, I wanted to go out and capture that. When I look at the photos, it's a personal thing to me. And even now, as you see on my website, I started adding descriptions for a lot of my photos that sort of represent what I was feeling and thinking, and the whole atmosphere at the time that I took that photo.
That's really awesome. Well, speaking of photos, let's get right into some of these photos. I think our viewers will learn a lot more about the two of you, and hear a lot more about the nature of your photography by actually looking at some of these photographs. So I'm going to bring some of these photographs up for our viewers to actually look at.
So this is Yellowstone National Park. Dom, I'm gonna have to have you remind me what this place is. I keep forgetting the name of it.
It's the Grand Prismatic.
Right, Grand Prismatic Spring. Yeah, it's a hot spring, and it's a beautiful hot spring. The got a lot of walkways on the other side of that, where you see the steam. It's but the oranges and the blue water and the oranges and reds in the from the chemicals in the water are just fabulous. This is taken from a hillside nearby.
It's absolutely beautiful. Tell us a little bit about the composition on this, Michael. I was struck by the trees in the foreground and the trees in the background, and just how you composed it. Were you thinking about that when you took the photograph?
Well, yes, and you don't really have too many choices here. First of all, this is probably 10 different photos. This is a wider image than what the camera will take. And I also do HDR, high dynamic range photography. So I take 5 pictures with each of them having a different exposure setting, and then I had to take more pictures to left and right to capture the full scale of what's out there. You have to hike maybe about 45 minutes to an hour to get to this platform. The Park Service actually has a platform, an observation deck, if you will, that you can stand and see this area. And setting up for you have to basically, you're looking at trying to get the full view of this without having more information in the picture than you need. So normally you'd get, if you're trying to get this size of an area left to right, you'd be getting more area top and bottom. So this is basically been cut down to make it a more pleasing picture.
I see. A lot of times when folks look at photos like this and they see the colors, the first thing they ask, just like they do when they see these cosmological photos of galaxies and stars that are colorized, the first thing they do is ask, are these natural colors? I mean, as you were looking at this, are these the colors you saw?
Yes, these are the colors. In fact, they would tend to be brighter typically. The oranges are absolutely gorgeous. They just really stand out. There's yellows there as well. These are the colors you'd see. And one of the things I have to do for my photographs is that I do a test, a color test, to make sure that what I'm capturing is correct.
All right. Understand. That's pretty cool. Well, let's go on to one of your photographs here, Dom. I think this is one of yours. I was just struck by the beautiful blues and the different hues here, and then the contrast with the sky. Tell us a little bit about this photograph, Dom.
Well, like the last photo, this is also the national park. This is the coast of Hawaii volcanoes on the Big Island, and that coastline is very dark because it's all lava. That whole coastline. If you had been there 40 years ago, you couldn't have taken that photo because that coastline was created, I believe, in around 1995, 1996, when Kilauea exploded the last time. So one of the things that I found interesting about this photo was that to me, it's something that, it's new. In over millennia, this photograph represents something that you couldn't have photographed it before. You can see in the right lower corner, it's the whole eye sea hole. So you could see through there a little bit to the water on the other side. But the way the water was reflecting and as it was hitting, it was a very windy day, as you could tell by the waves. And just the feeling of that brisk salt air blowing with the sun setting and the water just sparkling. Yeah, it's one of my favorite photos too. And I've had a lot of people who've asked for copies of this particular photo.
It's just absolutely beautiful, especially those blues and the feeling that they invoke. And I can understand why so many people would have asked for a copy of this photo. And don't forget, viewers, if you subscribe, you're going to be able to get one of Dom's photos as we're going through these photographs. Mike, let's go on to your next photograph.
This is Yellowstone National Park again. This is over at Mammoth Hot Springs. And Mammoth, the hot springs, as well as the geysers, the underlying volcanic activity changes year to year. And these are pretty much the hot water, the piping as they call it there, the steam vents, etc., basically stopped years ago here at Mammoth from one of the earthquakes that they have, and they have earthquakes frequently at Yellowstone. And so these are no longer being built up naturally, but the yellows are, that's the color it is. That's because of the different chemicals. There's different acids, alkalines in the water, different minerals, and from different times of the year or different years, different types of material comes up out of the geysers, out of the hot springs. And so it basically creates a colorful environment. This is all solid. It's similar to rock, but it can be damaged by being walking on it, etc. But yeah, there's a whole range of this, and it's just a beautiful area to see and view. Another wonderful place to visit.
And Don, if I can add, as a photographer perspective, what I admire about Mike's photography, from the upper left-hand corner at the top of the formation to the bottom right-hand corner, the clarity and the sharpness of this image is just spectacular.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Mike's work. It's all, and I was going to mention that on the last photo he had up there too. The trees in the foreground were as crystal clear as the trees in the background. Just really well done.
Right. Well, Mike, you mentioned something to me earlier on that we haven't talked about. You talked about the difference between taking a photograph and making a photograph. The photographs aren't just taken, but you make a photograph. So how much of this is actually making the photograph as opposed to taking it? And could you explain what you mean by that?
Okay, so the quote is actually from Ansel Adams, renowned black and white photographer. And he was referring to the fact that there's a lot of preparation you take in capturing an image, but there's a significant amount of work you do in the darkroom. This was under film. And he would spend 8 hours or more working on one image in the darkroom. And he had a process that became world known, the zone system. And but what he was basically pointing out is that the image, you can, I mean, a lot of people like to say, well, this is right out of the camera. And that's fine. I think that Ansel Adams would have said you could do better. And so the same thing with what I do is that my wife Pamela used to get upset about how long it would take me to get an image. I would probably be standing here for 20, 30 minutes capturing images, and then I would have a set of images, some with different exposures. And the reason you do that is that by having a higher exposure, you can get different shadows in one area, or you can get better light in some areas. And so then I can basically take all those images, put it into like a Adobe Photoshop, and combine those images together so that I will control how much shade or shadow I have in one area, or how bright it's going to be in another area. And it allows me a greater deal of creativity in terms of the final image. In terms of what's there, it's I'm capturing what's there. The image is what you would see. Now, there may have been trash in the image, and I see that all the time, especially in national parks. It's very irritating. I can take the trash out, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so that fundamentally what you're looking at is what is from my view as a photographer, the scene as pristine as it can be.
Right.
With as much detail as possible, with pleasing shadows and light.
Well, it certainly comes through in this photograph, and that's why I want to mention that. But that concept of Ansel Adams is just absolutely spectacular. I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with his family, and of course, there's the Ansel Adams Museum at Yosemite National Park that you can go through as well. It's that technique and the concept of making a photograph I think is really important, and I think that's what makes photography an art. Dom, let's go to one of your next photographs. I can work here.
Yeah, this photograph was taken sunset on Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as it's known to the local Polynesians. It was this year in January, and there was actually there was a storm brewing out on the Pacific, so there were a lot of clouds in the air, in the sky, and luckily this image, I caught the sun hitting the face of the moai, and you could see, I, and as Mike will tell you the same thing, we both love sunsets and sunrises, and I was lucky to catch this. 20 minutes later, this photo would not have been possible, but it's kind of it was just an inspiring feeling to be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with no other land really for 2,000 miles away on this little dot of an island, and seeing what the ancestors of these Polynesians did 300-400 years ago.
Right. That is spectacular. And for our viewers and listeners, actually on this podcast, we did a whole series on Easter Island. So if you go to your favorite podcast channel and look up Rapa Nui or Easter Island, just put it in the search, that particular podcast will come up, and you'll learn a lot more about these moai, which are these images in this particular photograph that are just spectacular. Mike, you had mentioned in one of our earlier conversations how this moai is looking out towards the ocean, and how in the composition of this particular photograph, how you really capture the feeling, and it almost gives the image a feeling of it's alive and actually participating in the environment and part of the environment.
Well, and Ansel Adams had a lot of quotes that people like to repeat, and one of them is that the photograph is based on where you stand, and here's an excellent example of Dom found the perfect place to stand to given the light he had, the right light to the face to give it the features, the texture you're seeing here, and that's what photography is about. It doesn't matter whether you're using an expensive camera or your smartphone. It's finding the composition that allows the subject to speak for itself and give it the space it needs. And this is what Dom is doing by having more space to the right of the image, because it's looking out towards the ocean anyway, and give it that space to be able to see that. And the light on the face is just excellent.
Interestingly enough, Don, I don't know if you touched on this on your podcast previously. This is the only moai that looks out towards the ocean. All the rest look inland.
No, I'm not sure we covered that. That's really an interesting anecdote. And just a phenomenal capture you have here. So, Mike, let's go on to your next photographs.
Okay, so this was just a photograph that I found to be amazing. The scene I found to be amazing. Dom and I both, at one point, at different times, visited craters of the moon. And we have a little different memories of our experiences, and a little different attitudes about it. I found craters of the moon to be almost void of vegetation, and this one spot here was one of the few spots there was actually a tree growing on the volcanic material. And what shaped my thinking in terms of capturing this image was that was that this tree was a survivor. I was just trying to capture its context, which is the volcanic material it's growing from, and the fact that it seems to be healthy and doing well. But my wife and I enjoyed our visit to Craters of the Moon. It is a fascinating environment to see because of all the volcanic material that's there, including some small, I don't know what they're called. There's like small volcanoes. They're outlets for the volcanic material coming up out of the earth.
They're
sort of like
tubes.
fumaroles.
They're called tubes. You can walk through the tubes.
Tubes. Yes, and we had that experience with one of the rangers when I visited the park. I visited the park several times, and going through the tubes was pretty spectacular. This image I really love because it reminds me of bonsai.
Yeah.
And junipers and bonsai are quite prevalent and famous. And one of the techniques in bonsai is how you see the tree curved and bending to the left here. And in bonsai, I can't remember the Japanese term for it, but it's where the tree is literally bowing towards you. And it's a famous technique in bonsai where trees are bent over like this, but they're oriented so that they're actually bowing toward you. And this photograph reminds me of that and captures a lot of that that concept and spirit of bonsai. And that's actually what you try to capture in bonsai. This is out in nature and a living thing, and this particular image is what bonsai artists try to capture. It's absolutely beautiful. So let's go on to the next photograph, which I think is yours, Dom.
Yeah, that's a panorama of one of the most beautiful mountain ranges in America, the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. And gee, I just realized that almost every photo you've shown so far has been in a national park. That must show our pedigree, Don.
Yes, it does.
But this was still early in the season, but they had a little bit of snowfall, and some of the aspen trees were starting to turn gold. You could see a little bit on the ground there, some of the bushes. But, it's just a typical Wyoming sky, that deep blue that you just can't even imagine, exists until you see it.
Yeah.
But and really the Grand Tetons are so inaccessible unless you're going to climb or really do some serious hiking. But yeah, I really enjoy my time at Grand Teton.
Dom, you mentioned something interesting that shouldn't go unnoticed by our viewers and listeners, and that's the relationship, the long standing relationship between photography and the national parks. And in fact, had it not been for photographers and their work and their artistry, many of the parks would not have been protected, including the Grand Teton and including Yellowstone, where photojournalists told the story of why it was important to protect these areas. And so there's a long-standing relationship there. And so it's really fitting that so many of these photographs have been done in national parks. But we're going to see some that have been done in other places around the world as well. Like here.
That's a national park too, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah,
it is, but I think it's in Canada.
It's Canadian national park, right? Parks Canada. So this is at Emerald Lake in Yoho, that's Yoho, National Park in Canada. This is British Columbia. And they have what's called the President's Range or Presidential Range. I'm not too sure which it is. There's one mountain peak is the President mountain. The other one is a Vice President mountain. And they're not named for the US President and Vice President. They're named for the President and Vice President of the Canadian Railroad.
Is that right?
And the Canadian Railroad basically, in some ways, like it did, like the U.S. railroads did for the national parks, opened up visitation for the parks. And similar to what the U.S. did, and I can't say for sure which started doing it first, but both would build these amazing hotels in the park, and they would have the railroad near the park, usually outside the park, and then they would basically, this would bring visitors to the park. The visitors would come by train, then they would take a stagecoach to this wonderful hotel that they had in the park, and that was one of the big key features of it. So in Canada, the same kind of thing happened, and this is one of the peaks. I don't know whether it was the Vice President or the President peak, and you can see the trail at the bottom, and the area was just absolutely gorgeous. It's Emerald Lake in Yoho National Park.
It's pretty spectacular. That's just beautiful. Let's go on to the next one here. Dom, I think this is one of yours.
Yes, this is of the Cook Inlet, outside of Anchorage, about 30 miles away from the city, so that the sky was dark except for the northern lights. It was in February of, I believe, 2021. And, as Mike was talking about composition, I had gone up to Anchorage and then to Fairbanks and said, I am not leaving until I see the northern lights. And being partially retired, I had the ability to make that decision. And literally when I was supposed to go home, I just decided to stay for another week. And the northern lights that following week, from the Arctic Circle all the way down to Anchorage, were just spectacular. So, this photo is the mountain range on the opposite side of the Cook Inlet. The northern lights were particularly brilliant that night, with a lot of purple and the green, a little bit of yellow, because the Cook Inlet is a body of water that has a huge tide. It doesn't freeze, and so I had that reflection. And I will tell you, it was cold. I think it was about 10 below zero, but we still got the shot and enjoyed it very much.
That is pretty spectacular. I know a lot of people sometimes are disappointed. They go up north and they expect to see the northern lights immediately. And that's just not always the case, because it depends on the sun's activity and how much energy is being that is, the Earth's atmosphere is being bombarded with from the sun to create the ionization in the atmosphere that brings forth the northern lights. And you have to be patient. And that's another aspect of photography, Dom, that I think you mentioned ostensibly is the fact that you got to be patient. And here you waited an entire week to get this photograph.
I'll point out, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I bet you were going to say the same thing, Mike. The northern lights are very difficult to see with the naked eye. And you really have to have, now, when they're really, really spectacular, you can see them easily. But most of the time you have to shoot the northern lights with a camera, because it has the ability to capture more of the light in the sky than just the naked eye.
Now, what I was going to point out is the bottom right-hand corner. DOMs capture some of the foreground. And the benefit of that is that it gives the viewer of the scene an idea of where they're standing. And it doesn't feel like you're out there floating. So it gives you a foundation. And that's a great compositional thing you want to make sure you have in your photo, is some way of being able to give the sense of where the viewer is.
And you know, Don, this is so ephemeral because 5 minutes later, the sky was just dark.
Amazing. Another beautiful photograph. And Mike, I think this is one of yours.
Yeah, this is in, I guess we were actually in Arizona at the time, weren't we, Tom?
Yeah, Antelope Canyon.
So this is Antelope Canyon. It's land. I don't know how it works there. This is, I think, BLM area, but I think this is land owned by the reservation.
Yeah, it's on the Navajo Indian Reservation.
And they charge a fee. It's well worth it. It is amazing to see. This image for me is, and for me, it's not even done yet. This is one of the images I have to go back and do more work on to bring down the bright light on the top. But this is probably about 4 different images. Each image has its exposure different because it was very bright at the top and very dark at the bottom. And in order to be able to even that out, I needed to have different exposure setting when I'm aiming down into the dark area, longer exposure, or a wider aperture. And so it's multiple images. Again, another image that you rely on the post-processing to come up with the complete image.
So when you do the post-processing, you're saying like you go into using a tool like Photoshop where you can do the post-processing?
Right.
And let's talk about that for a minute, because now, you know, we have iPhones, and these iPhones have these pretty spectacular cameras. And these cameras have algorithms in them that allow people to take some pretty spectacular photographs, just point and shoot with their cameras. What's both of you? A question for both of you. What's your thought on the algorithms in these iPhones that allow people to take these pretty spectacular photographs, where I guess the iPhone to some extent is doing the work for them and making the photograph as opposed to taking it? Do you guys have opinion on that one way or the other?
Well, I mean, it's great. I mean, it allows people to take some pretty excellent, very nice photos. For the iPhone or for the Android phones, they both do pretty much the same type of thing. You basically want to do an HDR image, which for that camera, it will go ahead and take multiple images and do the same thing I'm talking about in post-processing in the camera. An algorithm, in fact, smartphones with cameras are often considered to be just computational photography. There's a lot of computational work being done to make the image look pleasing for the photographer and for the viewer. So I'm all for it. In fact, I took photos also while I was in the trail here with my smartphone, and some of them came out nice. But the problem for me is that they didn't really capture the broad range of light like my regular camera can, changing the exposure setting. So, but no, the computational photography can be excellent. This is what you see here is my creativity getting the light where I want it to be. Even with the smartphones, they're just giving you what they can give you, and it's going to be what their algorithm says it's going to be, and it will tend to be wonderful picture for most people, but it does take away some of that creativity.
I understand. Any thoughts, Dom, on that?
Well, part of the enjoyment for me on photography is the mental and knowledge challenge of using a more complex camera and getting the settings right. And even if the photo doesn't come out well, I still enjoy that. Enjoy that challenge of trying to get the photo. You wouldn't have that with a smartphone, and I understand that it gives people a lot of opportunity to take photos. And I'll end that now because I could spend about 30 minutes complaining about the selfie. Um, it just seems like every time I want to take a photo, I have 5 people standing in front of me taking a picture of themselves with the most beautiful scenery on earth. And I keep wondering, why do you need yourself in that picture? That's a whole different rant.
That's okay. You're allowed. Um, let's go on to the next photograph. Now, Dom, this is one of yours, and this is, I have to say, this is one of my all-time favorite photographs. It just invokes a spirituality for me that's and tells a story. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's telling a story here that's fairly pretty incredible. Tell us about this photograph, where you took it and how you got this.
This is Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I had been following these 2 monks around. I felt like a stalker, kind of, because they just had, both of them had these angelic looks on their face. And I have actually a number of images of them. But we went into this one room, and the sun was starting to set, and it was coming through this window. And one of them just went up, and it was like he just wanted the sunshine to fill his body. So you see his arms spreading out. You could even see his fingertips are lit up, which I liked. And the other gentleman to the left, the sun just hit the front of his face, and everything else was dark. And yeah, I was really, really lucky to get this particular photo, and it's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. And the colors in the sunset are just spectacular. I don't know. I think it has an otherworldly quality. Mike, you looking at this as a judge of photography, how does one, get a photo like this that evokes such a feeling of otherworldliness and spirituality?
Luck.
I hear you.
I mean, the thing with what you need to become very familiar with you have to be very, very familiar with the camera and all the camera techniques and what you can get out of the camera. And then you're given opportunities. And this was a fantastic opportunity that Dom was up for. He had the right camera, he had the right lens. More importantly, he recognized what he was looking at was something special, and he made this image. He captured this image. And no, it is spectacular. It's one of those things that can take your breath away. It's a very nice image.
Well, Dom, I do have to ask, did you do any staging of this? Did you tell them stand here, you stand here, wait till I do this? Did you do very much stage direction, I guess is what I'm asking.
No, not at all. I'm actually a very shy photographer when it comes to people. Sometimes in some countries, I may offer people a few dollars to take their picture, but those are usually when they're standing right in front of me. More likely than not, I was back in the corner trying to be inconspicuous. And I'm trying to remember, but I might not have even brought the camera up to my eye level. I might have just shot it lower like that, because I don't want to intrude, especially a religious person's a monk's serenity by asking them to pose for photos. So no, this was just picking the camera up and taking a quick shot.
Understand. I think this is one of yours, Mike. Black and white we have here.
Yeah, it's this is a shot across Paradise Valley at Mount Rainier, which Mount Rainier is in the background there. This is, I like black and white. And this took some rescuing because the mountain had a lot of fog around it. So there was a lot of work with it and bringing out the image. So this probably took 3 or 4 hours in post-processing to bring me the light and the shadows that I needed to have for the image. The color is a nice image, but because of the fog, it became a softer image. And I can use when you convert from black and white the color, I use the colors that are available to help me provide the tonality that I need in the black and white. There's multiple ways of converting from color to black and white, and a couple of the ways allows you to really use the color to do more with the black and white, as opposed to just converting it automatically from black and white to from color to black and white.
So maybe say a few more words about that. What do you mean? I think most of us are looking at this and we think, okay, those trees were green. And how did you use the green to create the black?
Okay, so with Photoshop, there's a tool there that allows you to adjust based on the colors, to give an adjustment to in conversion to make that green either a brighter green or a lighter green, to bring yellows in, to bring yellows out. All that will have a major effect, major impact on how the colors are in the image. And then when you convert that all the way to black and white, those adjustments affect the tonality that you have in the black and white.
Fascinating. Lots of science goes into that.
It does. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike.
So basically allows you to go, like for that image was, I wanted to make sure I had pure black in some areas to the bright white in other areas. So I had the full dynamic, I was able to take advantage of the full dynamic range available at the time.
Makes sense. So Dom, this is in South Africa?
It's in the Okavango Delta in Botswana.
Mm-hmm.
This is a photo I like to call the Lions Club.
Yes.
And
that's absolute.
What's great about the safaris in the national parks and the preserves is that the apex predators, they don't worry about people. As long as you stay in your safari vehicle. This was not taken with a long lens. That's where they were. And we were following this pride. You could see their legs were wet because they came out of the delta water, and they were hungry. They were looking for a meal, and the one up on the very top is looking, and the other one is getting ready to join them. And we were able to follow this pride for about an hour until they found lunch, and which was a poor, unfortunate warthog. But it's so interesting, Don, that photography allows you to become part of nature like this. That was the catalyst to be part of a lion pride for about, it was about 2 hours, about an hour before and an hour after this, that we just drove along in a vehicle with the lions as they were looking for their lunch. And they just don't pay attention to the. Now, if I had gotten out of the vehicle and taken a photo, I would have been their lunch.
You'd have been lunch.
But
You-
it's just photography opens so much. I don't know why people would go to Botswana. I mean, every single person on the safari was taking photos. You don't really see anybody going just to observe. And so I think that's what photography does. It's an insight into the world that you normally wouldn't exercise unless you had a camera in front of you.
So we should do a contest here. Maybe I'll do this when I publish this and bring it up for our viewers to see if I'll have them count the number of lions in the photograph. They're so well camouflaged because they're more there than meets the eye when you just look at it for the first time. But it's a beautiful photograph. So I'm counting 7. I don't know if I'd win my own contest.
Gee, I only see 5. But I don't have reading glasses on at the moment, so.
That's okay. All right, let's go to the next one.
This is, again, Yoho National Park. This is Emerald Lake. This is actually the Emerald Lake. The Canadian national parks have an entirely different setup in terms of how they work with their concession operations, etc. When we talk about Banff National Park, there's actually a town of Banff. All those people basically have a permit to live there. They are allowed to live in the park. And this here is, there's about 15, 20 cabins here.
Mm-hmm.
And the cabins can hold multiple families. So it's a great place to visit. And this is just a sunrise in the area there. The just mountains all throughout the area. This is at Yoho is you get to the mountain peaks, which would be to the right of this.
Mm-hmm.
They basically form the wall between Banff National Park and Alberta, or and British Columbia. But no, this is one of the areas that I've loved going back and visiting. And anytime I go up there, I would probably want to stay here for a few days.
Yeah. I think this is another one of yours, Mike.
Yeah, this is Zion National Park. And yeah, it doesn't really, I mean, it just doesn't show up. This is one of those images that digitally, once you compress and everything, you lose some of the details. There are stars in the sky there. I could see maybe a couple, but there's stars throughout the sky. This is just a picture this is probably around 4 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And some light just coming up from the horizon. And mm-hmm. I just love the scene, both in terms of how there's a transition going on and the composition, the dark blacks with the dark blue to lighter blue sky.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned composition. If you can think upside down, it's almost like the blue sky is upside down mountains.
Right.
That's pretty cool. The way that's composed.
So I was basically about all night for that image.
It's amazing. Dom, I think this is yours. Is this in Australia or is this in Africa again?
No, that's Australia. That's Uluru.
Uluru.
Ayers Rock. I remember driving to get this photo because I could see the sun going down. And I probably broke 20 laws as I was driving to get to this spot. And I wasn't exactly sure as I was driving there where the sun would be. I wasn't sure if it would be over the top of the rock or to the side. And actually, I liked the fact that it was to the side, because then the sun rays were hitting the grasses and lighting them up,
Yeah.
where that might not have happened if it had been higher up. But it was, just that, again, that lucky, well, kind of lucky. I was hoping to get a sunset photo of Uluru, and this was from an angle really far. You had to go deep into the park to get this, because most of the time this is the backside of Uluru.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've always really liked this shot. I always think this was the first photo I took that was really special.
Right.
I think this was
So,
about 7 years ago.
so Dom, on the right middle part of the photograph, almost to the edge, there's a tree or a bush there. I guess it's a tree that looks a little green. Is that an artifact, or is that a color you captured of that tree as you took the photo?
To the right of of Uluru.
Yeah, it's
The third tree from the right is what you're referring to.
yeah, so if you look to the right, it's from the edge there, it's like the third tree
Oh, okay.
from the right edge. And there's a green. I don't know if you can see it in your image
Yeah,
there.
I really can't see it. Are you able with your mouse to be able to
Yeah,
point
my
something out?
mouse won't show up here. It shows up sometime. Sorry, I went.
Well, to answer your question, Don, I never
Uh-huh.
really paid attention to those trees. And so I'm sure that I didn't do anything in post processing, because I think it was mostly just this photo is pretty much as is. I mean, it was just really colorful, and
Mhm.
um,
Let me see if I can go back to it. Yeah, here we are.
It looks
yeah,
just like the light from the sun there, Don.
Yeah, I think so.
Because
Most
the
likely.
plants around it show a low level of light as well, but it's
Mm-hmm. It's pretty spectacular regardless.
oh yeah,
And
that's a great shot.
including the shadows from the trees give it such a tremendous effect. That darkness there is just it's beautiful.
well, as Mike would attest, and you could stay on that photo for a second, Don.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about Mike's photo, that dark one you just had, that struck me the most was one word that he used. It was 4 a.m. And that just shows you the effort that sometimes you put into getting that one good shot. And on this Uluru, one of the things that you just don't realize is what the sun is doing. You don't really capture that in the viewfinder.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes you just when you look at your image on your desktop at home, and you say, "Wow, the sun really did something special with that." That was pure luck.
Right. Yeah, beautiful. And Mike, I think this is one of yours.
Yeah, this is Olympic National Park. This is taken from Hurricane Ridge, and I was just amazed when I climbed up onto this ridge, looked down, and saw this river of fog. So it looks like I had clouds below me as well as clouds above. You're looking out to the Pacific Ocean, and that valley is just completely socked in with fog.
Mm.
And because of the temperature changes coming up out of the valley, it ends abruptly, and so
Mm-hmm.
you get nice clear areas above it. And but I just love this. I love this place. I loved the view I had here, and I thought that the capture here gave me pretty much what I wanted. Now, I'll be honest, I took a tree out of the image that was to the right
Mhm.
that that took the balance out of the image.
Right.
So, and I couldn't do that obviously with the capture. One of the things you want to do as a photographer is identify what you want to leave out of an image. The photography, you have to address with what you see in front of you.
Mhm.
Painters put in what they want to put in. They can leave out anything they want. Photographers have to have the challenge of having to stick with things that are there or figure out how to avoid them or remove them in post-processing.
Right.
So the tree that was to my right was disturbed the scene that I wanted to see, that I saw while standing there.
Right.
And so I feel this image gives me what I saw when I was standing on that ridge.
Understand. You see the fog. Go ahead, Dom.
I was just going to say, I think what Mike said was really important, and it's something that I try to do in my photography. Is that I'm not only taking the photo for my own gratification, but I want to share beautiful scenery and beautiful images with my friends and people who look on my website, and I want them to have that enjoyable experience. So sometimes, yes, there's some uh, removal of a person's head or a tree, but it's for the purpose of giving something to somebody that's enjoyable.
Right.
And I think that's what inspired what Mike said when he took that tree out.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Mike, I have a brief question for you. Are you familiar with the concept of the specter of the Brocken?
No.
So it's some photographers wait a lifetime to do this, and they find a scene like this where the clouds uh, are in a position like this, but they're able to stand on a ridge just right when that break happens with the fog and the clouds, and you have that change in climate. And if the sun is behind you, it casts a shadow onto the clouds,
Right.
and you take a picture of the shadow, your own shadow, on the clouds, and that's called specter of the Brocken. And this reminds me of that concept in photography. One of my old interpretive teachers, when I was going through training, took a photograph like that, and it was one of the most beautiful interpretive photographs that he used to explain this concept that you're talking about here with the fog filling up that valley like that. I was just curious if you'd ever
No,
taken a
and to
photo
be
like
honest,
that.
I would never be interested in doing anything like that. It's just different type of perspective in terms of what you're looking for in an image.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go on. Dom, I think this is one of yours as well.
Yeah, this is Ha Long Bay in Vietnam, central Vietnam. And I've always loved this shot because this is an immense body of water with these geological rock formations, karsts, I believe they're called. And out in the middle of there was this woman with her two children. Um, I mean, to me, it was like being in the ocean, and they're just out there in a wooden canoe, going from one spot to another. And what I've always liked about this is just the how small they look in comparison to the landscape. And I believe I mentioned earlier, I enjoy taking photos of people and culture in their natural scenery. This is just something I was really happy to have this shot.
Yeah, I love the sky as well in that shot. But we're going to see a few more photographs of people and their cultures as we go along here. Mike, I think this is also one of yours.
Yeah, this is off the Oregon coast. I think Dom, you identified the exact location. I think I recall.
Yeah, Cannon Beach.
Cannon Beach. There were a few more people in the image. There was a sign in the image. I left a couple people in to give a sense of scale. The rest of it, I want to have the sense of aloneness of, and it's the it was obviously a conversion from color. Some just probably took a couple hours in post-processing to be able to get some of the fog. In some of the areas, the fog was just too heavy, so I was able to reduce that fog and bring up the peaks, give me better contrasts, and remove some of the distractions that were sticking out in the image.
Right. Well, you mentioned evoking a feeling of loneliness, and the two people actually do that quite well.
Right.
In the photo. I mean, I think that was a brilliant decision. Absolutely beautiful. Dom, is this one of yours?
Yes, this is down in Patagonia, in Torres del Paine National Park, which is actually in Chile, the Chilean part of Patagonia. And, as you can imagine, the weather down there is always changing, moving in and moving out. And there was a storm starting to brew. You could see the storm clouds off to the left. And it just lit up the scenery in this most spectacular manner. I mean, this is just one of the most beautiful places on earth.
Yes,
and I was lucky to get this photo.
Yeah. I love the way one of the spires to the left sticking up into the clouds.
That's great image. And you know what? One of the things that you really want out of an image is contrast. And this just has it with the light coming through the clouds like that. And onto the rock face.
Pretty spectacular. And Mike, I think this is one of yours. We're looking at some architectural photography now, a little bit of a change up here.
Yeah. So this is Notre Dame Cathedral Basilica, I think it's called, in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And I mean, it's a French inspired architecture and coloring. It was just a beautiful church. And I thought I sent you a larger image. It's a shame it came in so small here, but it's this took me probably I was there probably for an hour or two getting the captures, getting my images. And with architecture, you have a lot of issues, especially in terms of perspective. So you want to make sure everything that's vertical stays vertical. Everything that's horizontal is supposed to be horizontal. And depending upon how you have your lens aimed, sometimes you can affect perspective. So all that has to be addressed either in, and I have perspective lenses, but all that has to be addressed either in the capture or in the processing.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean. I've had that challenge before as well. I mean, because all the pews are clearly, nicely horizontal, pillars vertical, and sometimes, yes, if you don't capture that right, they can be quite askew, and you're wondering what's going on. That's absolutely beautiful. These are some more of the images from Easter Island of yours, Dom.
Yeah, again, I think this was the next day, another sunset. And these were inland, so the ocean was far from these. Moe.
Donna, let's see, Mike, this is yours. Wow.
I'm very jealous.
Yeah, so this is yeah, okay, so this is north of the Fortress Louisbourg in Nova Scotia, up on, this is the Atlantic Ocean. And I guess about 4 years ago or so, we had 3 major storms come up through the East Coast, through the United States. And this was the last storm. After it went up through the United States, it came up through Canada, and then it headed east out to the Atlantic. And this was just that front. And I just happened to be there at the right time. I had no idea this was coming through. I had been there since about 5 in the morning, getting other shots, sunrise shots on the ocean. And then all of a sudden I saw this monster coming in from the west. And I stood there for about another half hour or so capturing this before I needed to get the heck out of there, because it was obviously going to come down raining very hard where I was standing.
Tell us again where this is located.
So it's way up north on Nova Scotia. So if you go into Nova Scotia, you have to go, this is on the East Coast. There's a Fortress Louisbourg, that was a French fortress that the British attacked and took over during our colonial period. In fact, we had some Massachusetts volunteers go up to help the British. This is before the Revolutionary War. And at that time, France had a lot of claims in Canada. So that's what that fortress was there. And near here also was a lighthouse. Excuse me. And I like getting pictures of lighthouses. So I was up there getting image. I want to get images of the area sunrise on the ocean. And so it just happened to be here at the right time, right place, and get a great shot of this.
Yeah. Well, you captured it beautifully. So Dom, this is another one of yours we were talking about earlier. Tell us about this and how you captured this and made this image.
Well, like the one that Mike had before, this is in Antelope Canyon in Arizona. And Mike was probably standing right next to me when I took this photo. And I have another one similar to this that I now call the Bride, because I see in this image a woman standing with her arm extended a little bit, and then the train of her long wedding gown. So, it's funny, Don, I didn't see this at first, and other people started telling me that looks like a woman in a wedding gown, and then I saw it. But it's there's about I think they told us, Mike, that day that there were 13 different openings in the canyon ceiling. That on June 21st, when the sun is directly overhead, all 13 of them have a direct sun ray coming in. At this time of year, Mike and I were there in early May. There was only, I think, 3 or 4 of the 13. But as you go through there, this is the dust that's in the air. Sometimes the guide enhances it by throwing a shovelful up in the air so you get more dust coming down, and you just start snapping away. And it's just, you never know what you're going to get till you look at it when you get home.
Beautiful. I think, Mike, this is another one of yours.
No, that's actually mine.
Oh, yeah, Dom, this is yours.
This is one of the most awesome places in the United States. It's called The Wave. It's in northern Arizona. And this is just a small piece of this rock formation that spreads probably a mile or so in all different directions. And all of the rock looks like a wave like this. It's about a 3.5 mile hike to get to it. Not a difficult hike. You need to get a permit. It's harder to get a permit than it is to hike into there. But it's just the most incredible place in the United States in terms of geological feature.
I'll tell you, geological features are just, many of them are just fantastic make fantastic photographs. And down here in the Southwest, this is actually in Arizona, right, Dom?
Yeah,
Northern Arizona.
it's in northern
Northern
Arizona.
Arizona.
I think you actually enter to the park from the Utah border, on the Utah border side,
Right.
and then you cross over some point along that.
But this
Right.
whole area is just absolutely amazing opportunities for photography. Everywhere from Bryce Canyon to Zion to um, uh,
Canyon de Chelly.
the Canyon de Chelly, Monument Valley, the Staircase Escalante in the area here. It's just it offers so many unlimited opportunities for photography. And as a additional gift to anybody, if you're interested in geology at all, you see it all. You see what was here millions of years ago.
Absolutely. Just another
Not mine.
photo of the moai that
Yep.
that Dom took. Another absolutely beautiful one. I love the light on the last two moai there from the sun. It's pretty.
Yeah, actually, that's the moon.
Oh, is that the moon? I thought
Yeah,
we
that's
talked about that earlier, and it was that's
no,
right. That was that orange moon.
it was an orange moon.
Right.
And sometimes, you almost start. I'm sure Mike does the same thing, particularly when your whole day has been wasted of photography because there's fires and stuff burning in the air and you can't get a clear shot. You're waiting all night till sunset because you know that sun is going to be bright red. And in this particular case, they were burning some fields to clear the fields for maybe agriculture or whatever. So I knew the moon was going to be a bright red, and it turned out to be that way.
Mhm.
And I was lucky that it was a full moon.
It's beautiful. Now, Mike, I think this is one of yours.
No, that one's mine too.
This is yours too, Tom. Yeah.
Yep, that's, I guess, part of a national park. It's on one of the San Juan Islands. Um, like what Mike just said, I love taking photos of lighthouses. I don't know what it is and why they're so picturesque. I think it's just so many images of them, the sentinel there against bad weather and protecting mariners and the sun setting, and it just, and of course, all the San Juan Islands are spectacular, and this was turned out to be a nice shot.
Now there's a there's a secret to this kind of a shot there, Don, that what's being lit up is underneath the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that occurs is that if there are no clouds on the horizon, or very few clouds on the horizon, and the sun has already set. Okay, so the sun is down very low, and then the light is basically coming up from below the clouds, lighting them up. And a lot of what I find is that a lot of times photographers will leave as soon as they see the sun set. And this oftentimes occurs just after the sunset, and photographers have missed the opportunity to capture it because it only lasts, this may last only less than a minute before that light's lost.
That's beautiful. That's a good point, Mike. Again, a shot from Africa. I think this is yours, Dom, as well.
Yeah, that's in South Luangwa National Park in Zimbabwe. I'm sorry, Zambia. And it just, it was such a fun shot to watch all these little baboons. They stare at you. You look at them. They run around. They're playing, and just to be able to catch them with the sun behind them and lighting up the edge of their fur,
Mm.
Was really nice. And just basic, just really on this trip, I started doing uh, a depth of field that was less deep, so you could see the image behind the tree and the baboons is blurred, and it's just more
Right.
focused on the
In the
animals
foreground.
themselves. And I just love that little face on the bottom.
I know that's great. Oh, the whole photograph is beautiful. And speaking of faces, I think this is what you're talking about, is taking pictures of people and their cultures, this particular image, Dom.
This is northern Thailand, and what I've always loved about this photo is that obviously from the neck up, these two little girls are very traditional, yet she's wearing a Hello Kitty t-shirt. And just the looks on their face, both of them, they're, they're like two little angels. And I don't know. It's just you don't you just wonder what these two little girls are going to look like 30 years from now when they each have about 10 more rings on their neck. Um,
Yes.
and there's a side of me that didn't like that aspect of this photo. I mean, I know it's their culture,
Right.
but it is a strange cultural phenomena that they wear those rings and stretch their necks out. And some of the older women that I took photos of had very, very elongated necks. But just the looks on their faces, they're just adorable. And again, with the Hello Kitty T-shirt, it just showed the contrast of the modern culture with their native culture.
No, I think that's beautiful, the cross-cultural. And I did see a couple of photographs earlier that you sent me of the elderly ladies with, they must have had 30 or 40 rings on their neck. Another architectural photographs. I think this is yours, Dom, of the Taj Mahal.
No, it's of
Or
it,
no, this is in Thailand too.
no, this is the main mosque in Dar es Salaam in Brunei.
Ah, yes.
And I didn't mention it earlier, but I got very lucky after I retired that I started teaching cybersecurity classes literally all over the world. A lot of these photos, I was teaching a class here in Brunei, and gave me the opportunity to see things that I probably never would have seen had I not, um, you know, combining work, as Mike said earlier, combining work with fun.
All right. Well, we're almost to the end here. This is the last photo, another architectural photo, I think, of yours, Dom. Where is this?
This is the Ponte Vecchio on the Arno River in Florence, and the lighting on the river and throughout Florence is it's kind of a gold tinted lighting, and the river wasn't flowing very hard, so you had just a perfect reflection into the water. Um, I had to climb down on the bank to get this particular photo, but um, I've always really liked this one. In fact, I'm thinking about putting this one in my house. It would be the first photo I ever put in my home.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh, that's
never put them in my home.
wow. Well, gentlemen, this is the last of your photos, but I have a couple of questions for you still. And Mike, maybe we'll start with you, and that's, what does the future hold for you? I mean, is there something transcendent that's happened in your life with respect to photography that's made you such a different person that it's set you off in a direction that you didn't expect?
Well, the most recent thing is that my wife died last year,
Oh, yeah, I was so
and
sorry to hear that.
most of my photographs were taken with her. I mean, we traveled throughout the United States and Canada together, so all those places she was with me. Um, Having lost her, it's been a challenge getting back into photography, and figuring out where I want to go, how I want to do it, because I always had a partner with me. So
Right.
going to some new places has been tough. I plan to be going to Quebec City in the last week of October to get some pictures in the historic city, and that'll be basically by myself. And it'll be that's a new experience for me. I went out and visited Dom in May, and we went out to see Antelope Canyon and several other areas in Utah and Arizona, and Nevada, and that was great. That was a good experience. But I'm still basically coming back into my photography. Now I'm several years behind on doing processing of my photos, and I'm starting to go back and take a look at those. Like I've only developed, only fully processed, I think 1 or 2 photos out of our Antelope Canyon experience, Dom. And I have probably about 20 or 30 I need to process just to see if I have anything there worth keeping. So, and that's the same for a lot of other parks as well. I have a lot of photos from Banff and Yoho that I put aside the processing so I could do something else. And now I need to go back and complete that. But that's the nice thing about taking photographs, sorry, capturing them in RAW as opposed to JPEG. When you capture an image in JPEG, the camera basically puts together the image and throws away 90% of the data that was originally captured. So you want to capture images in RAW, which is all the data that the camera actually captured at the time of the image was shot. And then that gives you the opportunity to do editing, processing later on. And with different techniques and capabilities, developing your skills, you can go back and reprocess images and have them be entirely different looking images, oftentimes much better than you were able to do the first time because you know more.
All right. So the future for you is really concentrating on your images and seeing if there's something there that's, as you said, worth keeping, but also, I would guess in that context, something that continues to inspire you, move you forward, keep you taking photos. Also, I would imagine not wanting to put words in your mouth, though, that pays a lot of homage to your wife, who spent a lot of time with you, taking photos and continuing to keep that particular memory alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's my intent right now is basically to see a lot of the same places we've seen before. But then I started looking at that and realizing that we were all over this country as well as Canada or the last
Right.
since we retired. There's not many places that I could go that we weren't there already. But I don't want to make it look like I don't want to make it seem like it's an homage to her. It's more that I need to see things in a different light now. With her there, it provided me a context, even though she didn't say much on a lot of the stuff we were at in terms of capturing images. She provided that context. So now I'll be going in there as a different type of a context, and my images will probably be slightly different.
Reflect those. Dom, how about you? Same question.
Okay, well, first of all, what Mike didn't mention, because he doesn't know, but as soon as he gets his house settled, he's going to get a hard sell for me to move out west, so that we can
like you gave me.
Yes, I tried that with you too. You can see, and you see what happened to you. You ended up in a hurricane. But I would love to have Mike at least come out to, if not live out west. It would be so much fun, to see that there's going to be a super bloom in Death Valley, and we could just get up early and drive to Death Valley and photograph that. But from my perspective, I travel and photography are equal passions for me. I've been to 121 countries. There's about another 20 I'd like to see. I'm going to do Scotland and a little bit of England, but mostly Scotland in 2 weeks because I've never been up to the northern part of Scotland, and I'd love to see the lochs and have those, foggy, cloudy images that you see out of Scotland.
Right.
And then basically my plan is 4 international trips, one a quarter for the next 2 or 3 years until I'm too old and too poor to continue doing that.
Understand. Well, look, guys, this has been absolutely fantastic. And you talk about a fantastic duo. You guys are the fantastic photography duo. And I've enjoyed going through your photographs. They've been an inspiration for me. And you know how much I love you guys and the work you do. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And so thank you for joining us and sharing your photographs with us.
It was certainly my pleasure.
Same here, Don.
Wow, those were some awesome photographs. I want to thank you all for joining us on this episode of Journey Through Nature and Science. As I said in the beginning of the photograph of this episode, of course, you're going to get an opportunity to get one of these photographs for free. All you have to do is go to my website at natureandsciencepodcast.com, and there will be a link that you can click on. I want to invite you to join us on our next episode where we'll be talking with Bob Krummenacher about making wilderness area out of much of Big Bend National Park. Bob was a superintendent at Big Bend for a number of years, and he's going to be talking about why it's important for much of Big Bend to be made into a wilderness area. Again, I just wanted to remind you, if you're just listening to the audio version of this, go to my website at natureandsciencepodcast.com. You'll be able to see all of these photographs and also subscribe and be able to get one of these photographs for free. As always, stay safe, share happiness, and remember, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing.